early days of the Dance of the Dragons, allegiances were still very much in flux, and you could never truly be sure who was a black and who was a green. In King's Landing, King Aegon's Master of Whisperers, Larys Strong, the Clubfoot, had drawn up a list of all those lords who gathered on Dragonstone to attend the coronation of Queen Rhaenyra and sit on her Black Council. Lords Celtigar and Velaryon had their seats on islands, as Aegon had no strength at sea. They were beyond the reach of his wrath, for now. However, those black lords whose seats were on the mainland enjoyed no such protection and would become the Green's first targets. With 100 mounted knights and 500 men-at-arms of the royal household, augmented by 3 times that many hardened sellswords, Sir Criston Cole marched to the nearby Rosby and Stokeworth, whose lords had only recently repented of their allegiance to Rhaenyra, commanding them to prove their loyalty by adding their power to his. Cole's host advanced upon the walled town of Duskendale, where they took the defenders by surprise. The town was sacked, the ships in the harbour set afire, Lord Darklyn beheaded. His household knight and garrison were given the choice between swearing their swords to King Aegon or sharing their lord's fate. Most chose the former. Rook's Rest was Sir Criston's next objective. Forewarned of the coming, Lord Staunton closed his gates and defied the attackers, staying loyal to Rhaenyra. Stuck behind his walls, his lordship could only watch as his fields and woods and villages were burned, his sheep and cattle and small folk put to the sword. They had no time to prepare for a drawn-out siege, so provisions inside the castle began to run low quickly. He dispatched ravens to Dragonstone, pleading for help or face starvation. Despite attempts to shoot down the ravens, the birds arrived at their destination. Queen Rhaenyra was still shaken for an attempt on her life or the lives of her sons. Thus the Queen was still reluctant to attack King's Landing directly, despite the urging of her council. Some sources assert that Rhaenyra was still so grief-stricken over the death of her son Lucerys that she abstained herself from the War Council altogether, giving over her command to the sea snake Corlys Velaryon and his wife, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the Queen who never was. 9 days after Lord Staunton dispatched his plea for help, the sounds of leathern wings were heard across the sea, and the dragon Meleys appeared above Rook's Rest. The Red Queen, she was called, for the scales of scarlet that covered her. The membranes of her wings were pink, her crest, horns, and claws bright as copper, and on her back, in steel and copper armour that flashed in the sun, rode Rhaenys Targaryen, the Queen who never was, come to relieve Rook's Rest from Sir Criston Cole's assault just in time. Sir Criston Cole was not dismayed at the arrival of Rhaenys Targaryen, who was upon her dragon Meleys. He had expected this, counted on it in fact. It was all part of his plan. Drums beat out a command, and archers rushed forward, longbowmen and crossbowmen both, filling the air with arrows and quarrels. Scorpions were cranked upwards to loose iron bolts of the sort that had once felled the dragon Meraxes in Dawn. Meleys suffered a score of hits, but the arrows only served to make her angrier. She swept down, spitting fire to the right and left. Knights burned in their saddles as the hair and hide and harnesses of their horses went up in flames. Men-at-arms dropped their spears and scattered. Some tried to hide behind their shields, but neither oak nor iron could withstand the dragon's breath. Sir Criston sat on his white horse shouting, "Aim for the rider!" Though through the smoke and flames, Meleys roared, smoke swirling from her nostrils. A stallion kicked her jaw as tongues of flames engulfed him. Then came an answering roar. 2 more winged shapes appeared. King Aegon astride Sunfire the Golden, and his brother Aemond One-Eye upon Vhagar. Criston Cole had sprung his trap, and Rhaenys had come snatching at the bait. Now the teeth closed around her. It is said that Princess Rhaenys made no attempt to flee, not even for a moment. With a glad cry and a crack of her whip, she turned Meleys towards her foe. Against Vhagar alone, she might have had some chance, given Meleys was smaller and swifter than the old beast. But against Vhagar and Sunfire, together, doom was all but certain, and Rhaenys fully knew this as she charged at her foe. The dragons met violently 1,000 feet above the field of battle, as balls of fire burst and blossomed, so bright that men swore later that the sky was full of suns. The crimson jaws of Meleys closed around Sunfire's neck for a moment, till Vhagar fell upon them both from above. All 3 beasts were spiralling towards the ground out of control. They struck the ground so hard that stones fell from the battlements of Rook's Rest, half a league away. Those closest men to where the dragon fell did not live to tell the tale, with the dragons leaving a huge impact crater in the dirt. Those further off could not see what was happening on the ground, as flames and smoke blocked their view. It would be hours before the fires gutted out to a smoulder, but from those ashes, only Vhagar rose unharmed. Meleys was dead, broken by the fall and ripped to pieces upon the ground by the larger dragons, and Sunfire, that splendid golden beast, had one wing badly damaged, while his rider, King Aegon, suffered broken ribs and a broken hip from the fall, burns that covered half his body. This said, his left arm was the worst. The scalding dragon flame burned so hot that the king's armour had melted into his flesh. A body that was believed to be that of Rhaenys Targaryen was later found beside the broken carcass of her dragon, but it was so blackened that no one could be sure if it was her, the beloved daughter of Lady Jocelyn Baratheon and Prince Aemond Targaryen, faithful wife to Lord Corlys Velaryon, mother and grandmother. The queen, who never was, lived fearlessly and died amidst blood and fire, a true dragon rider's death. She was 55 years old. 800 knights and squires and common men lost their lives that day as well. Another 100 perished not that long after, when Prince Aemond and Sir Criston Cole took Rook's Rest and put its garrison to death. Lord Staunton's head was carried back to King's Landing and mounted above the old gate, but it was the head of the dragon Meleys, drawn through the city on a cart, that awed the crowds of small folk into silence. Septon Eustace tells us that thousands left King's Landing that very night, knowing that now an attack of retaliation from Rhaenyra was inevitable, until the Dowager Queen Alicent ordered the city gates closed and barred. The King's dragon, Sunfire, too huge and heavy to be moved, and unable to fly with his injured wing, remained in the fields beyond Rook's Rest, crawling through the ashes like some kind of great golden worm. In the early days he fed himself upon the burned carcasses of the slain. When those were gone, the men that Sir Criston had left behind to guard him while he recovered from the battle brought in calves and sheep. But it's needless to say, the Battle of Rook's Rest took its toll on both sides of the war and was one of its key turning points.